Yo, what's up everyone? It is fight week, and there are a lot of exciting matchups that are really captivating on this card, but one man in particular really interests me, and I want to talk to you about him on today's video, Tony Ferguson.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Hold on, I'm talking, brother.
has just begun. Wow, look at all these people. I wish I could dance like that guy.
A man who has been in the UFC for the better part of 13 years and has become a fan favorite and really captivated the audience with his exciting style, or at least he did. The last 4 years have not been kind to Tony Ferguson as he's gone on a legendary losing streak. It's been really bad to be a Tony Ferguson fan.
Who can relate? Woo!
And today I want to discuss his career, his life, his potential matchup with Michael Chiesa this weekend, his future, and why it took so damn long for this man to finally retire. Anthony Armand Ferguson Padilla was born in Oxnard, California on February 12, 1984, but grew up mainly in Muskegon, Michigan. He is of Mexican heritage. His surname of Ferguson comes from his Scottish stepfather. Ferguson was a three-sport athlete in Muskegon Catholic Central High School in American football, baseball, and wrestling. He was the starting defensive back for the 2000 Division VIII State Football Champions and was a three-time All-State selection in wrestling, winning the 152-pound division in 2002. After high school, Ferguson enrolled at Central Michigan University before transferring to Grand Valley State University. He also did a stint in Muskegon Community College. He did not complete his degree though. But he did have a successful collegiate wrestling career, winning the 2006 National Collegiate Wrestling Association National Wrestling Championship in this 165-pound division. Jesus, that's a fucking mouthful. God damn. Following college, Ferguson moved back to California to be closer to his extended family, working in marketing and sales during the day and picking up shifts as a bartender at night. One night, while working at a bar shift, a Patreon noticed Ferguson's cauliflower ear and struck up a conversation about his wrestling background. This patron was a trainer at a local MMA gym and invited him to work with some of the young mixed martial artists on their wrestling. Shortly after this, he decided to pursue a professional mixed martial arts career. Ferguson would make his pro MMA debut on April 11th, 2008, getting a second-round KO. And he would get a record of 10-2 before being recruited to the 13th season of The Ultimate Fighter.
The Ultimate Fighter.
Where he would ultimately, hey, you see what I did there? Win the competition in scary fashion. Jesus Christ. He'd go on a 2-fight winning streak before facing his first loss in the UFC to Michael Johnson. What the fuck is up with Michael Johnson? This man, beat a prime Tony Ferguson, knocked out Dustin Poirier, landed a good punch on Khabib. But this would only be a tiny pebble in the road, as Tony Ferguson would go on a legendary 12-fight win streak, with notable wins over Gleison Tibau, Josh Thompson, Edson Barboza, Rafael dos Santos, Kevin Lee, Anthony Pettis, and Donald Cerrone. But it wasn't just the people he beat that was impressive, it was the way he did it. Tony would often end fights covered in blood that wasn't his. He physically and mentally broke his opponents in a way that truly shows why they called him the Boogeyman. One thing about Tony's UFC career that often gets stated is despite his long, impressive winning streak and some pretty good names at the time on his resume, he never got a shot at the undisputed title. He got shots at interim gold, but for one reason or another, he could never compete for the real deal, whether it was Conor McGregor doing Conor McGregor things or it was the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight falling through over and over and over. This Khabib fight is one that'll become even more important later on in the video and one I'm actually going to discuss right now. The legendary Khabib-Tony fight would be booked numerous times, Tony and Khabib pulling out every single time for one reason or another. They would try to reschedule this fight in 2020 when Khabib was the champion, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Khabib would be restricted from traveling to the US and could not compete. This, however, would not be good enough for Tony Ferguson, and he would not wait for Khabib. He would instead decide to do 2 weight cuts for some reason, take a short notice bout against Justin the Highlight Gaethje, which is crazy. And despite this, you'd think Justin's a very different stylistic matchup than Khabib, probably the opposite threat of Khabib. And, did he change his game plan? Did he ask for more time to prepare? Did he go out there with, different intentions? No. It's Tony Ferguson. He went out there with the same game plan he would have fought Khabib with, and he got fucked up. It was one of the saddest fights of all time, in my opinion, with a historic beatdown on the former interim champion, as Justin Gaethje would TKO him in the 5th round. This would, unfortunately, be the start of a very, very depressing domino effect, as Tony Ferguson would go on to lose to Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush, Michael Chandler, Nate Diaz, Bobby Green, and Paddy Pimblett, as Tony Ferguson would go on to tie BJ Penn's all-time losing streak record, which he'll go down in the record books for one of the longest win streaks in lightweight history and one of the longest losing streaks too, so I guess that's something. And now he's booked to face Michael Chiesa, a fight that if he loses, he'll break the record of BJ Penn, and he will be known as the guy with the longest losing streak in UFC history. And I'd like to say that this is a winnable fight for Tony, because Michael Chiesa is not a great fighter nowadays. I mean, he used to be pretty good, but nowadays he's pretty damn bad. But honestly, there's no telling anymore, because the worse the opponents get on this win streak, the worse Tony Ferguson looks, which is depressing to say. And, there's been redeeming qualities. There's been those flashes and moments where it looked like Tony Ferguson had a glimpse of El Cucuy left in him, but they always just get taken away like that. And we get brought back to reality. And as a delusional Tony Ferguson fan, I'm going to be rooting for him this weekend, of course. But at the same time, I'm also rooting for him to wrap it up, please. And many of you may wonder, why isn't he retired? Why hasn't the UFC forced him to stop at the very least? Why is he still competing after all of this? And the truth of the matter is, Dana White is going to let him fight as long as Tony wants, which is depressing to say. But as long as Tony draws in the money, they're letting him compete, because he's a fan favorite. Everyone loves Tony, and he's going to draw in a lot of people and a lot of money because he's a big name. And as long as he has that name value to him, people are going to watch, and Dana's going to enable him and let him fight, even if Dana doesn't, quote-unquote, like it. Now, that's just the side of the UFC letting him compete for this long. Why won't Tony stop? Why has Tony refused to stop competing on his end? There are a few main reasons that I want to go over with real quick, and one of which being there's nothing else for him. It's a very harsh and a very depressing thing to say, but it's the truth. We've seen it time and time with fighters. I mean, just look at Volk, for example. Even when they have beautiful families that they love, they spend time with the people that they love the most in this planet, they still have that looming cloud over them. They still have that itch, that need to compete, because this is everything to these fighters. These fighters don't know how to operate as normal people outside of the cage, and it drives them insane. I mean, Volk was talking about how he was drinking every night on the couch and shit when he wasn't competing, and he had that need and desire to compete. And Tony Ferguson clearly has that, where when he's not competing and he's not fighting, he's getting into DUI situations, or he's having mental breakdowns and throwing shit. You know, it's a very weird and a very depressing cycle, but a lot of these fighters aren't fully mentally well, and that leads to them not being able to live normal lives when they aren't competing. Another reason for this is there is a hole in Tony Ferguson's career. There is something missing, and there's something that he'll never be able to have, and it's a question he'll never be able to answer, and it drives him insane. It leaves him to never be satisfied with his career. Habib Nurmagomedov. There was a period of time where all he did was prepare to fight Habib, think about Habib, wonder, can I beat Habib? And he was obsessed, and he still frankly is. I mean, listen to him talk in his media day interviews. He still talks about that potential fight with Habib. He still talks about how Habib left. He still is calling him out, chasing for that fight, saying how he would have beat him. Oh, you know, I want that fight still. Oh, I want to coach the Ultimate Fighter with Habib. Blah 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 blah. He is still so obsessed with this, and it's because he never got that answer. He never got that hole filled, and there's a part of his career that was never answered, and he will never be satisfied because he never got that answer. You know, I think wholeheartedly if Tony Ferguson would have fought Habib, win, lose, draw, he would have retired so much quicker, because I think if he would have fought Habib, he would have been satisfied with his career because he would have finally had that answer. He would have finally known, am I good enough to beat Habib? Am I not? How would that fight would have played? What would have happened? You know, he would have finally known, but he never will, and it drives him insane. And the final reason why Tony Ferguson refuses to retire is the fans. The fans play into his delusion. You know, admittedly, I've done the same thing. You know, I'm no better. We keep supporting him no matter what. We keep backing him no matter what. Anytime we hear the party has just begun, bow, 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 we start dancing and celebrating. We start chanting, El Kakui, El Kakui. Bro, and we start, you know, hyping him up. At the press conference, we cheer for him. Yay, Tony, 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 Tony. We start hyping him up, you know, in the comments of his Instagram posts or on Twitter. Everyone's so positive, like, CSO motherfucker, champ shit only. Hey, you're the best, Tony. I love you, Tony. You're my favorite fighter, Tony. You know, the fans love him so much. He is such a fan favorite that it enables him, bro. I think it plays into his delusion because he's not a mentally well man. He is a very delusional human being, and this is not to be mean or anything. It is just a fact. He is not mentally well. In his mind, he still wholeheartedly believes that it's not his fault. He still has it in the tank. It's everyone else's fault but his, because he blames everyone around him but himself. He's changing gyms. He's firing coaches. He's moving around. He's, you know, saying, oh, this team was toxic. You know, they were trying to bring me down. When Tony, they probably just wanted what was best for you, and that's for you to stop fighting, bro. Come on. It's a never-ending cycle. You know, he competes, gets the fans' love, it gasses him up, plays into his delusion, goes out there, lose, has some built-in excuse. Oh, I got eye poked by Bobby Green. Oh, I took the fight on short notice against Nate Diaz, and it was at welterweight, so of course I don't look like I normally do. Oh, Beneil's a really good fighter, became ranked. Oh, Charles Oliveira became the champion right after, so whatever. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Oh, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's constant excuse after excuse and refusing to take accountability that he is just not good anymore. If he goes out there and he beats Michael Chiesa, I think it'll do as much harm to him as it will do good. On one hand, I'm going to celebrate like a motherfucker. Tony Ferguson is one of my favorite fighters of all time. It's why I'm so critical on him. And, you know, if he beats Chiesa, there's two outcomes that could happen. Either he finally is satisfied, he's like, okay, I went out on a win, I'm good, and he retires, or he starts to believe that he can win again, and he starts to believe, oh, it's fixed, the problem's over, I can go back to winning fights, and he doesn't fix the issue at hand, and he ends up repeating the same mistake, and he basically misses out on the perfect layup. On the other side, we have Tony Ferguson losing, being forced to retire, retiring willingly, probably not going to happen. And we keep this never-ending cycle of Tony refusing to just believe that it's finally over. I don't know fully what's going to happen against Michael Chiesa. I mean, it should be a winnable fight. Chiesa kind of crumbles under pressure, gets hit in the face, starts crumbling, shoots panic takedowns with nothing behind them, and he often leaves himself open to Darce chokes, which is Tony Ferguson's bread and butter. And, he doesn't do well with pressure and over, the course of fights. So, he starts to break down and shit. So I think that should benefit Tony Ferguson, but at the same time, I can't even look at this as a logical matchup because Tony is just so weird nowadays, man. It's, oh my God, bro. Now, with Tony Ferguson's last potential fight being this weekend, let me know in the comments. Do you think the boat will finally rise once again, or do you think it has fully sunk?
Ladies and gentlemen, the party has just begun.